Hello! Today, World Sociological Society interviews Cliff. Hello, Cliff, how are you?
Doing all right.
Good. Ready for the first question, Cliff?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Question 1. How did you get into typology?
I got into typology primarily just by researching. I noticed like I was very different from my family. It was mainly a big difference between me and my brother. He was always really outgoing, sort of like the life of the party, and I was very reclusive and sort of just to myself. Um, So I began like just researching introverts and extroverts, and I noticed that like when I would research, it would be like extroverts are really outgoing, sort of like the party. Introverts are really reclusive and whatnot. But as I further researched more, I learned that that's not really correct. Um, Introverts, like the introverts and the extroverts, it's primarily just how you process energy. So your introverts, they process energy internally, while your extroverts, they'll process energy more so um, by interacting with the external environment. And that's how your extroverts maintain energy. So in retrospect, you can have quiet extroverts and outgoing introverts. So I started studying that, and then I ended up finding a test, and I took the little test or whatnot. I just kind of like it just kind of happened by accident, and I got a four-letter acronym, and I typed it up on Google, and then the descriptions and whatnot came about. So I started researching the descriptions, and it kind of sounded like me, but I was like, So I I started like looking up just different YouTube videos and looking at different people with that description, and then I seen like another description that I could have sort of felt fill in better, and then I started just doing research, more research. I started getting to the cognitive functions and how they all worked. And I started researching, well, not researching, but I started watching a lot of DJ R&D's videos and how he would compare and contrast the types, like an INTP versus an INTJ and whatnot. And it was a video he was talking like it was a specific type that correlated to the Enneagram 5. And then I was like, what's Enneagram? So I started researching the Enneagram, and I started to understand the Enneagram better. And with that, I started researching the Enneagram more. Then it was like you have like tri types and wings and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I will watch a lot of type interaction videos on YouTube to try to understand like just how the cognitive functions manifest sort of in real life. And I also would watch a lot of DJ R&D's videos, and it was Pneumoceptor and all of them. I watched their videos and the type interactions, and then DJ R&D, EJ R&D, he had a video describing socionics. So that's kind of how I got into socionics. Like I was like, what is he talking about? Like when he says SLE and all that. But if you like kind of look at MBTI and you know the cognitive functions, you can kind of just kind of figure out the three-letter acronyms that socionics gives to the personality types.
Mm-hmm.
So like sensing, logical extrovert. Well, if you know that is sensing, and then you know that the third letter is extroverted, so that correlates to extroverted sensing and logical. So if the first function is extroverted, the second function has to be introverted. So you know that that would be introverted logic, and then you can kind of just put it together like that.
Mm.
So that's mainly how I got into typology. Then I started like giving all my friends the test and my family and
Mm.
tried to figure out what they were. So
So,
yeah,
so there's like a continual path of understanding for typology. Like you had an initial curiosity about introvert and extrovert, and then you stumble
hmm
across some more information, and you kept on just looking for more and more information in there and researching more and more into it. And also, you
yeah,
seem to be very good at recounting exactly the steps by which you proceeded through um, finding out in different types of typology.
yes.
Okay. What interested you about psychology in general?
I just always been fascinated about how the human mind works, like the inner workings of the human mind is very complex. So it just and also just utilize the information to sort of like interact with other people in a more efficient manner, just so I kind of know what's going on in
Mm.
social interactions, because I'm not like naturally in tune with it. But if I have a theory or something that I can sort of see it applied, then I can utilize it better
Okay.
to pretty much interact with people. And yeah,
So you almost need to approach people you're more comfortable with a sort of system or certain, maybe it's like a rule book or certain methodology which can help you to overcome the more instantaneous demands of an interaction.
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
Do you work or go to college?
I work. I work at it's a manufacturing company. Um, Pretty much what we do is I don't know if you're familiar with like tube fittings. Like if you go in your basement, you see like the plumbing,
Mm.
like all the little fittings and whatnot. Well, pretty much we just make those, but for major corporations, so such as NASA and semiconductors and whatnot. So to put it in perspective, like you have like your iPhones and they have like a, I don't know if iPhones have SIM cards or is that Android? I'm not sure. But
Probably Android.
um yeah, well, like your SIM cards, like there's a machine that has to make those SIM cards. We
Yeah.
make the parts for the machines that make the SIM cards.
Mm. I see. Basically, so it sounds like rather detailed work, like it's kind of like small bits and how you fit them together.
Yeah, yeah, it's very detailed.
Mm. Okay. How do you behave when you're at work?
I keep to myself for the most part. Um Pretty much like I kind of work on autopilot, like I'm more so in my head as opposed to talking to people. Like I'm just thinking about events that are not even related to work. It could be something that happened in the past, something that could possibly occur in the future, but rarely sort of in the here and now. Someone
Hmm.
has kind of like snapped me out of it. Um, I noticed that like the longer I've been at work, I've been working there for about 2 years or so.
Hmm.
I slowly started to open up to people. It's like this one coworker, we kind of just sort of like playfully banter with each other.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting dynamic.
So over time, you are able to form like relations with other people, like with your coworkers, but it takes a while for you to like to get used to them.
Yeah, it's like it's a few of them that are really loud. They're like they used to like offer me like food and stuff like that, and I would just tell them like, no, I don't want it. Um, if I want it, then I'll take it. And they're like, well, why don't you eat it later? And I'm like, no, I don't want it. But if I want it, then I'll just ask them.
Mm. Yeah. So you don't really respond too well to people trying to look after your physical states.
No,
Mm.
unless I just want the food, then I'll of course ask for it. But yeah,
Yeah. We don't like someone else like taking the initiative of feeding you.
uh, unless I want it. But like, if I don't want it, then I'm just
Yeah.
not gonna take it. Yeah.
Okay. So do you enjoy what you're doing?
No. I mean,
What
it's
would you like to
really
do?
uh, that's a good question. I would like to do something more along the lines of criminal psychology, like sort of figuring out how criminals' minds work or serial killers. Like I would be really up to like doing sort of like psychologically analyzing Hannibal Lecter, as long as there's like some plexi screen that you can't like bite me or chew my head off or anything like that.
Uh, I've typed Hannibal Lecter.
Uh huh. Yeah, so I would like to do that. Also, I just don't like working for people.
Mm.
Um, I'd rather just do my own thing. But this like job is like real stable and whatnot. So it's kind of like just something to keep constant income until I find something that I can make more income doing. Then I'll just probably quit that job and do something else.
Yes. Okay, so it's a job which you find kind of boring, that
Yeah,
you kind of cling on for the sake of stability.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So why are you particularly interested in serial killers?
Serial killers? It's just interesting how they behave. It's just different from what's commonly, you know, what's socially acceptable, I suppose. It's just
Mm.
it's really interesting.
Okay. How do you behave at home or when you're on your own?
Uh, I'm pretty to myself. I'll yeah. For the most part, what I notice with people is they'll initially say I'm very quiet and
Mm.
whatnot until they get to know me, and then they'll say like they'll say I'm very profound, or I'll say some very insightful things.
Mm.
They'll but initially they'll think I'm really cold and mean and whatnot.
Mm. So you're not someone who's very comfortable just letting out your emotivity to the people around you. You kind of keep it very, very reserved and very much to yourself.
Yeah,
But
like
yeah.
yeah, like I kind of like fill people out. Um, I don't really like open up to a lot of people, but then I can just tell some people are more open-minded than others. And if I open up to some people, they're going to, because I have maybe some controversial views on certain topics and whatnot.
Mhm.
So I kind of feel that I'm going to have to debate them, and then how they sort of debate is just emotionally biased. It's just emotional and they can't understand like a logical debate, and then it's going to be pretty much it's going to be like a pointless debate because no one's going to understand anything, and no one's going to necessarily
Mm,
reach a higher understanding. So I pick and choose who I interact with.
I see. Kind of the demand for you is that the interaction is logic based.
Yeah,
So you kind of require you can't really switch to a more persuasive way of debating. It doesn't actually appeal to logic, but rather than to their emotions.
yeah,
It's like people almost speak different language. It's like some people you can't really persuade logically. You have to almost appeal to their, yeah, you almost have to go into like sophistry and rhetoric for them to actually understand you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Um, okay. And you say that when people do get to know you, you come across as quite profound.
Yeah. Like a lot of people say, like I wouldn't expect you to think that way, or I wouldn't expect you to do what you do. So this one girl at my own job, she asked me like if I had $1 billion, like what would I do with the money? And I pretty much just said like I would start like sort of like a foundation for people who want to be more so into music or just for the arts, mainly music because I'm into music. And she just said like I never thought that you would say something like that. Like she had some stereotype about like men being not into art and whatnot, and you know,
Hmm. Okay. Now you also said that when you're actually doing your job, you, because it's so monotonous, you kind of you go on autopilot and you say you think about the past and the future.
yeah. Like I think about like I was thinking about this interview like before I contacted you. I was thinking about like how this interview was going to go and the possible outcome of the interview. Um, I think about just a lot of it just kind of goes back and forth. Like sometimes I'll think about the past. I'll think about like people's behaviors. Like there's like patterns to people's behaviors that you can just kind of see how they're going to react to things,
Hmm.
and it's pretty easy to predict how they're
Okay.
going to react.
So it's like what you kind of do is you kind of reflect back on past trends or like certain repeated occurrences in your memory,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
from that you kind of piece together a projection of how things are likely to turn out later.
Yes.
Okay. What are your other hobbies and interests?
I'm really into music production. I've been doing that for about 11 years now. Um, how I really got into it, I used to be like a huge gamer. Like I play like a whole bunch of video games. And then my cousin he used to make instrumentals and whatnot. And I just like kind of asked him like how you do it. So he gave me a program and he showed me like the basics of how to operate the program, the sequencer and whatnot. And I kind of just became fully engulfed into it.
Hmm.
Um, it's just kind of like you kind of listen to stuff on the radio and you just break it down and you just really understand it. And then you kind of use that information to come up with your own sort of style of doing things. Like you might take various different genres and whatnot and just kind of combine them to make something new. And then I noticed that I'm also more so into the engineering process, not necessarily. I like creating stuff too, but I'm more so in the engineering process as far as making things sound better,
Hmm.
giving it more of a professional quality.
Yes.
Um, and I also got like really into programming synthesizers because it's like sometimes you hear a sound in the radio or a song and then you just want to recreate it, so you have to like break it down and then understand like how the sound is created, like how many like in the sense you have your oscillators and whatnot.
Mm.
Um, and then you kind of figure out the oscillators and then you have to just like rebuild it to make a sound. Like it's like certain effects you can hear it and then you can you can just know what how it fits all together. That's with synth programming. And it's kind of the same with just creating your own instrumentals. So like if I was to teach somebody how to do it, I would advise them to like take like understand how it's structured, how an instrumental is structured beforehand, before you start like making your own style, just understanding the basics of how a song is created. So you take like one of your favorite instrumentals, like maybe they have like a file that has the instrumental broken down piece by piece so you can understand it better.
Mm.
And then with that information, you can utilize it to make your own instrumentals and whatnot. So,
So, yeah, go
oh, I'm also into boxing. More so
on.
just analyzing boxing, not being a boxer myself. I'm more so into like boxers, like not like sluggers, like people are just swinging and whatnot, but like a boxer who sort of deconstructs their opponent. They like sort of like break it down in a real strategic manner, break their opponent down, like countering their attacks and whatnot.
That's interesting. Okay, the 2 points. First of all, about the music. So you can
Mm-hmm.
see that you see. I'm right in saying that you kind of take a very technical approach to the music. So first of all, it's
Yes.
like first of all, you start with like this detailed like breaking it down into its elements, and then
Mm-hmm.
utilizing like methodologies and practices for how to tweak it in the way that you think is right.
Yes.
Hmm. Okay. And about the boxing, so yeah, you have this that strategic approach to the boxing. You're more interested in analyzing the boxing than necessarily participating in the boxing. But
Exactly.
also it's similar to like the serial killers. You seem to have like an interest of like skirting around almost physical aggression and looking at it.
I like horror movies, so
Hmm.
uh, let's say a little bit, perhaps.
Hmm. So you yourself aren't so much a participator in the violence, so much as almost like an observer and an analyst of it.
Yeah, I like to analyze it. Um, like my mom, she thinks I'm weird because I rather analyze things rather than participate in
Mm.
directly in them. She says I'm like boring or no fun because of that. But
Mm.
like I guess she's more into actually participating, where I just rather sit back and observe and analyze and critique.
Okay, so that goes into the next question, which is how are you with family?
Um, I'm pretty. I keep family. I keep people in general at a psychological distance.
Mhm.
Um, I'm more in tune. I do better with my family members that are more talkative. Um, People who are not talkative, uh, like I'm not going to really start a conversation with them or whatnot. But like my brother and he lives in Florida now. He was I believe he's a ESTP, and he just talked to me. So I didn't really have to force a conversation with him. He would just keep talking to me. So
Mm.
um, in general, I get along with my family. Um, I would say I talk more so with my dad, and we'll usually talk about boxing, and he likes to watch like scientific documentaries and whatnot. So we'll like discuss them. We sometimes get into like debates and whatnot, and like from my perspective, he has a hard time seeing like the big picture. Like he's so focused on like details, he can't
Mm.
really comprehend the big picture. And like I guess from his perspective, like I'm speaking too broad about things
Mm.
and not being very specific, almost in a sense, sort of generalizing.
Mm.
Also, he has sort of like a fixation towards like rules and traditions which I don't really even really care about.
Mm.
I would say rules are more so like guidelines. They're not necessarily black and white per se.
Mm. Okay. So we can see there's that. It's interesting that you say that you keep a psychological distance between yourself and people, but you seem to appreciate it when someone else actually starts talking to you and kind of draws you into their conversation.
If it's interesting,
Mm.
yeah. If it's like they're having a conversation and I can have sort of a input that has some sort of content towards the
Hmm.
conversation, then like I'll talk. But if it's just like small talk that's very mundane, then I don't really have too much to contribute to it.
You seem to like have a requirement that conversations are big picture related, so that
Yeah.
they have some sort of profoundness or have some sort of long term importance in the world rather than the day to day specifics.
Yes, exactly.
Mm. Okay. And yes, and you often tend to you seem to look down upon things that you would find mundane.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay. How are you with friends?
Um, I have here in Cleveland, yeah, in Ohio, I have like one real good friend.
Hmm.
I don't need a lot of friends. I'm perfectly fine with just having one friend, or not. I don't need a lot of people around me. But we met on a music production forum about like 6 years ago, and he happened like I moved to Ohio, and he happened to live in Ohio about 30 minutes away. So
Okay. And how are you with romantic relationships?
um, well, what I noticed I like is sort of like playful aggression. I like kind of a bit of crudeness. I don't know why, I just do. Um, Usually relationships though, they're kind of like short-lived. Um, yeah, but that's pretty much.
Hmm. Okay. What are you good at in life?
I'm very good at I'm very good at analyzing systems and sort of like breaking them down and then sort of literating them to people in more of a basic, sort of in layman's terms, so they can understand. I'm also very good at sort of seeing in between the lines, like what people are really saying. So it's just like certain ways, like how someone may type something. You can see that there's more than meets the eye to what they're really saying, or just how they say, or how they say something, or how they respond. So I remember like an example. Me and my friend, we were debating, and then he kind of just left off the debate by saying like, just believe what you want. And then a couple of days later, he said like something along the lines of, "Why can't you let people just believe what they want?" And I was like, then that it kind of hit me like, so I'm getting to you. Like, it's no other reason why you would say this.
Hmm.
Like 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 it's no other reason that you would necessarily say this. And then a couple of days later, he was like, I was really like thinking about what you were saying, and it kind of like changed my opinion about what the topic that we were debating about. But he was trying to like fight it.
Hmm. I
Um.
see.
Oh.
So almost as like a focus on undertones rather than overtones.
Yeah. Also, I don't. It's just some sort of way of thinking. I don't know necessarily. I can describe it to you, but since you got, I could tell like you know what you're talking about, so you can further explain what it is that I'm exactly doing.
Mm-hmm.
So at my job, we like my like just for the sake of what I'm explaining, I'm gonna say that my job is facility A, and I'm gonna refer to facility B. So I work at facility A, and pretty much when like you have two types of employees. You have your regular employees, your regular associates, and then you have your certified trainers.
Mm-hmm.
So usually when you're training to do an operation that you never done before, you're trained by the certified trainers.
Mm-hmm.
So the supervisor, he comes in and he tells me like, we want you to work on a operation that you've never done before. So I'm like, okay, you know. So next day I go there and I happen to be trained, like the trainer happened to be a regular associate. So I didn't really think too much of it. But like after she got done training me and I was asking one of the certified trainers for like help or whatnot, and then she said just confide with Sam. That, that's her real name, but she ain't never gonna see this video. Confide with her. So I was like, okay. So like, and I was just talking to all the certified trainers, and they were saying specifically that Sam was the only person who knew how to do the job. So one of another one of the certified trainers a couple days later, she came and approached me and said like the parts that I was doing on the operation, they used to come from facility B that where she used to work at. The certified trainer, her I'll just say her name's M.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then everything from those from her saying that she worked at facility B, like everything clicked because like how I looked at it was, well, the regular associate, she must work at facility B. Now there's other facilities, but they're all like 30 minutes away. So being that facility B is right next to us and those parts came from facility B, I made the connection that the associate that was the only person that knew how to perform the task, she must have came from that facility as well. So what I did the next day is I asked her, like, Sam, did you come from facility B? And she was like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, why? And then I just sort of reiterated the process that came that I used to come to that conclusion.
Yes.
So I'm not sure exactly what that is, but I
So
guess
it's
it's sort
like
of like educated guesses based off of little bits of details.
it's like a mixture of inductions and deductions.
Yeah.
Hmm. And it's like as a result, yeah, you kind of went into an environment where you had no real prior experience, and so
Hmm.
over time you kind of pieced together an understanding from little bits and pieces where you had to pick up, and therefore I'm just filling in the gaps with your inductions.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty much how I figure out like everything
Hmm.
by utilizing this method. I give it like another example. Um, so I was on like a producer forum and whatnot,
Hmm.
and there was another producer, and he claimed that his instrumental was like jacked, like somebody stole his instrumental,
Yes.
and pretty much what he did was he gave his instrumental to like a third party or like a middleman to give to like a major artist, but the middleman he made instrumentals as well. So what ended up happening was the middleman, like when you send the instrumental out to an artist, you have to separate it piece by piece. So you have all the files and whatnot. So the middleman, he has like all the files. And what had happened was he he recreated the instrumental. Hello?
Oh no, I'm just muting the mic 'cause there's background noise.
Oh, okay. Um, yeah. So he recreated the middleman. Like he made the instrumental. Like he had like he had like direct ties to the artist. So what he did was like he was with the artist and he recreated the well he made the original instrumental sound more professional and whatnot. Um and like and then the middle or the guy that recreated the instrumental he was talking about like he didn't steal the beat or whatnot. But then it didn't really make sense. Like the original guy who originally made it like he posted up his version and it was like a less redefined version is a mm, less refined version of the instrumental and it's
Mhm.
like specifically like this instrumental like why would anybody like steal this specific instrumental like it's a cool instrumental or whatnot but there's millions and millions of instrumentals still if you're going to do that so it's sort of like it will make more sense that this producer, the producer who claimed that the guy stole it, that he made the instrumental. Um, the other guy, he took the instrumental and like made it more professional sounding, but then he didn't give the producer in the beginning, he didn't give him credit for it.
Mhm.
So it kind of makes more sense that the beat was stolen from the original producer because it makes no sense to make a less refined version of the original instrumental.
Mm. So again, it looks like you're kind of piecing together events from small amounts of information based on common sense and the understanding of and kind of understanding of what people would actually do in these situations.
Yeah,
So you kind of build up a story from these small details.
yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I can see the pattern there. That's quite interesting. Okay. Um, what are you bad at in life?
What am I bad at? Uh, I am bad at dealing with emotional people. My mom, believe she's an ENFJ. She would like make me do things that like were really, to me, they're very uncomfortable. I guess to extroverted feeler, feeling dominance or extroverted feelers in general, this like sort of things that you just do. So, the situation was my English teacher. She her son died in a car accident, and she happened to go to the same church as I did, like when I because my mom used to force me to go to church. Um, and then she told me like go up to her and say that you're sorry for his loss. I mean, you're sorry for her loss, like her son dying and whatnot. Like I never really knew her son, and it was just like so uncomfortable for me to
Mm.
do that. So to pretty much sum it up, it's hard for me to like console people and whatnot. It's it was a nerve event where my friend like he was like his first time I ever seen him emotional. He was talking about his cat that passed away. He had his cat for like 10 or 11 years. So it was like a childhood cat. And like I could just tell like he's starting to get real emotional. Like he almost looks like he's about to cry. And like I just like in my head, like I was just sitting there listening, but my head was like, change the subject, please. Like change it to something else.
Mm.
Um, because like we were talking, because he has his own business and whatnot, and I'm trying to get into that what he was doing. So I was like, kind of just keep the subject of keep the conversation to the business,
Mm.
so I can understand how the business works and kind of leave the emotions out of it.
Yes, there's like a general aversion to emotional expression, and it's like
Yeah,
when you're, when it was it's not just your mother asking to console someone, but asking to display a certain group emotional state which you yourself weren't necessarily feeling because you didn't know this son, you didn't really there's a sort of sorrowfulness you weren't quite feeling yourself.
Hmm.
So it became very uncomfortable for you to try and project this emotionality just for because it was a funeral event.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Okay. Yes, that does sound like that sort of emotionality and that sort of been bothering you from your mother. Okay.
Hmm.
Describe. No, what was it? Oh yes. What brings admiration and criticism from others?
Admiration. A lot of people say I'm very objective,
Mm-hmm.
uh, very logical, analytical,
Mm-hmm.
interesting, um, a good listener.
Yeah.
As far as like criticism, pretty much the same thing. A little bit too logical, too objective, not being emotionally biased at all. Um, some people may consider me a bit arrogant at times. Um, maybe a bit selfish because I'm not generally paying attention to other people's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's pretty much what I can think of.
What brings admiration and criticism from yourself?
Um, for myself, hmm, I would say being objective. Like, I mean, if my mom was like in an argument or whatnot, and like she was wrong, like she's not making any sort of logical sense, like I'll tell her like straight up, you're not making any sense. I don't care if you're like my mom or not, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else? That I can figure things out very quickly with like just a um with very little details. Like I can always sort of just analyze things and break the system down and really understand it. Things that I don't like about myself. It's sometimes hard for me to get motivated to do things. Like it would be nice, even though like it's kind of like somebody would be nagging me to do things, but that would really be beneficial. Hello? Hello?
Oh yeah.
Hello?
Hello. Sorry about that. The connection went temporarily.
Oh, that's okay. Did you hear what I said, or do I have to
I heard about you being
repeat?
objective, and
Yeah.
that's fine. I pretty much heard enough to have a good idea already. I just ask a few more questions just to clarify. Oh
Okay.
yeah, one thing that's interesting. Oh, I'd like to hear about is what do you admire and criticize in others?
I admire people who are competent. Um, yeah, people who are competent, open-minded individuals. I admire people who can see different perspectives. So yeah, people who aren't closed-minded. And as far as what I don't like, incompetent individuals, closed-minded individuals, people who kind of just follow the crowd and whatnot. They don't make their own decisions. They don't indulge in any sort of critical thinking. Like they just don't ask questions for the most part. They don't question things. They just kind of accept things as they are and don't never question.
Yeah, so once again, like this criticism decisions independently.
I didn't hear the
So
last.
like that criticism of like the crowd mindedness, where people are essentially make kind of go along with a group feeling rather than making their own decisions independently.
Yeah.
Okay. Describe your ideal place, setting, or world. Describe its atmosphere and surroundings, its inhabitants, and the conversations and philosophy.
Okay. My ideal place would more likely just be like somewhere in the beach. Kind of like in a room, maybe one or two good friends, and we're just like making music and furthering our knowledge about topics that interest us.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other question? It was
It's
that's the
like
ideal place.
so like what is like the philosophy of this environment? Like what are like the social rules or the norms?
Just I would say more of a utilization of critical thinking
Hmm.
and being open-minded to different perspectives.
Okay. Describe a bad place, a situation where you feel hopeless, inferior, and insecure. What would be causing these insecurities?
Well, I have like two different ones. Like maybe if I was going to a situation where I had no idea what was going on. Like I guess the feeling of being incompetent, it's not really a good feeling for me. As
Hmm.
well as I remember I went to this one party and I kind of had like bad social anxiety, and then everybody was just kind of asking like, why are you so quiet? Why are you so reserved? And like I just wanted to get out of there. Like I just didn't want to be around all those people.
And it's like kind of worse for you when people like trying to almost like it's expectation on you to be a certain way in terms of your emotionality.
Yeah,
Yeah. So if they just went and started talking to you and kind of just
hmm
or even talking at you in a certain way, that would have been kind of all right because they just would have taken up the sort of conversational energy. But also then they actually kind of place an expectation on you to reciprocate emotionality or join in the group enthusiasm. You kind of
yeah,
find that uncomfortable.
yeah. They do that at work too. Like
Mm.
they're like, why don't you sit with all of us? And like I don't really want to sit with y'all. I just sit by myself.
Mm.
Or like I like sitting by like people who I can have really meaningful conversations with about like typology and whatnot. Like I got like a lot of people at work into like typology. Well, a few of them.
I see. Okay. Describe a good time where you really enjoyed yourself. What caused you to have such a good time?
Um, I guess like a good time is sort of like when I can piece things together. Like I get like a lot of energy from like just sort of like piecing things together and then things sort of like dropping down and everything just makes sense.
Mm.
Um, uh, what else? Yeah, that's all I can really think of. Like I like going to parties sometimes. It's just more so when I feel like it, or like when somebody just sort of like forces me to go to one.
Yes. Okay. Final question. Well, it's a final question from me. What do you feel about the world we live in? What are your opinions, affirmations, and criticisms of the present day and the people in it?
I think the world, like a lot of people, like myself included, like the world's kind of like self-gain. Like people are all trying to do self just like they don't like necessarily helping other people. Like, or if they do help somebody else, it's not just helping them for the pure sake of just helping. It's more like I need some sort of return for helping people. Um, but it's like if it's like I have a friend at work, he'll come to me for advice about music production and whatnot. And like I enjoy helping people who want to learn and kind of take the initiative to show that they want to learn. Like they're very enthusiastic about learning about things. I notice like that's how I get like a lot of friends, like a lot of the friends that I made. It comes from me having like or them perceiving me having a whole bunch of knowledge on the topic and them wanting more knowledge on that topic that I could provide for them. So a lot of my friendships occur through mutual interests.
Mhm.
What
Ah,
was
okay.
our
Okay, so it's like you almost your value, as it were, seems to come
mm-hmm.
from kind of people coming to you to ask you questions, and you're able to give them information on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. Those are all questions for me. I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
check questions and answers to see if there are any other questions that the audience might have asked. We've got like 3 viewers. Let's take a look. Okay. First question from my friend Rana. How many thimbles of cream can you give one mouse?
I have no idea.
Okay. Question done.
Okay.
Okay. Question from Rowan. Okay, this is an interesting question. What are some of the controversial views you hold that you spoke of early in the video?
Uh, well, just pertaining to religion. Um, like me myself, I'm not necessarily well, I'm not a believer, so like I kind of like as opposed to talking about how people's days are going and whatnot, I would like to talk about like religion and things of that nature. Um, or just different viewpoints. As long as just like no one's forcing any sort of forcing their views on others, then it's cool. Like if it's just for like a general better understanding
Mhm.
of the perspective. Um, yeah, that's pretty much all I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay. Right. So those are all the questions.
Hmm.
I'm going to make my analysis now. So if people who are watching the video don't want to hear my analysis, they can turn off the video now. Hang on, I'm just trying to get rid of that question and answer question. Good. Okay. Cliff, I think
Hmm.
that you are an intuitive, logical introvert.
Hmm.
And I think that because what seems to be like your strongest areas are in terms of, first of all, reflecting back over the past and kind of analyzing different trends, and from there, like predicting how things are likely to turn out in the future. You also
Hmm.
have this very like technical, very logical way of approaching things, where you take little statements people may say, you kind of deduce from what people have said, or like sort of small amounts of information to try and build up your big picture. And you do seem to have a very technical, very, very logic-focused approach to building up your picture, which suggests to me your main emphasis being building up this long-term picture, which I say is the introverted intuition and leading thought, and then helping it out. Also not helping out, but like working in the background, a very, very strong introverted logic, which I would say would make sense as a demonstrative function. You at the same time, you tend to focus more in terms of logic on methodologies, processes. Like when you're working on your music, you tend to understand different technical ways of changing the music and different programs you can use to do that. In your job, you're good at knowing how to fit things together. You have a job which seems to be rather process-oriented. And in terms of your communications with others, you seem to enjoy the idea of actually being able to give factual information to people who ask for it, which kind of goes into this valuing of extroverted logic. Also, your need for people to be competent at a certain degree also shows a valuing of extroverted logic, although I'd say it makes more sense as a creative function, with introverted intuition being the leading function. So the main thing for you seems to be this analytical way of building up the picture, whereas the processes being more like different steps for you to go after the picture or the goal or the outcome once you've kind of settled on it. Also, this analysis seems to spread to other areas, like you kind of want to go into psychology and look at serial killers and understand their psychological motives. You also like breaking down the strategies in boxing, which also shows that sort of not only that analytical introverted logic and introverted intuition, but also that sense of a strategy, the methodology that's being used in the boxing, which shows the creative extroverted logic. Also, Matt, your interests seem to be centered around is more aggressive sports or aggressive activities. Shows at least a valuing of extroverted sensation. So that's sort of more primal, more aggressive part of someone. Whereas it seems to be a rather weak thing in you, in that you yourself aren't so good at actually participating in these physical activities and going out and doing them. Whereas others may be more interested into that. You seem to almost like to observe it and kind of take in that impulsive energy, and that possibly mobilizes you in some way, rather than you actually outputting your energy by engaging in it actively. So that suggests to me that extroverted sensation will make a good suggestive function for you. Also, when your problem with communication with others seems to be about the idea of expression of emotion, being expected to show certain emotions depending on how the group it seems to be feeling, and you tend to be rather critical of a sort of group feel. And you seem to very much prefer your own personal feelings. Like you kind of need to get used to people around you before you're more comfortable opening up to them, showing that the relationship kind of comes before the your personal relationship to people comes before any sort of emotionality of the group, which just to me a valued introverted ethics and a very much devalued, quite weak, definitely a vulnerable function, extroverted ethics. That's why when you go to a party, well, you really do not like when people are saying, "Why aren't you happy? Why aren't you expressing these emotions? Why aren't you being this way that everyone else is being?" And that kind of makes you feel very uncomfortable. However, what you seem to appreciate is the more extroverted sensation approach, when someone just is like full of energy and just starts talking at you, and you kind of find that more mobilizing. There's no real expectations being placed in you, rather just this like raw energy is being thrust in your direction. So that shows suggestive extroverted sensation and vulnerable extroverted ethics. Finally, I think that from what you said about the idea of food being like given to you earlier on, and how you kind of, if you don't particularly, you need to assess whether you actually want that food. If you want the food, you ask it for yourself. You don't seem to be like people just feeding you, which seems to me to kind of make sense as like an unvalued introverted sensation. Like often the conflict of ILI is ESC, and they're very stereotypically known to look around people and see if they're unhappy. And if they're unhappy, they kind of try and feed them to keep them happy. The idea of the introverted
Mhm.
sensation helping their extroverted ethics to raise the mood, and you seem to, and that sort of approach seems to that puts you off. So overall, I'd say that intuitive logical introvert makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I figured.
Mm,
It was mainly between LII and ILI.
mm,
So, but in the beginning, it kind of I could see LII, but then as I started really reading, it just because I'm like always in my head and I don't necessarily pay attention to like my room's pretty much a mess. Like like it's just like not like an important thing to me. Whereas furthering my knowledge about a topic of interest really is. So I utilize more energy on that than necessarily like cleaning and whatnot.
mm. Yes, you definitely seem to definitely that intuitive sense where you're more aware of perceiving information that's based on trends and generalities rather than the specific concrete details. So like,
Yeah.
and also exerting physical action should tire out rather quickly because that's something that's rather weak for you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean the difference between LII and ILI, there's the essentially is the alpha versus gamma values.
Yeah.
So an easy way to tell the difference is just looking at the vulnerable function versus the suggestive function and seeing which they respond positively or negatively to. And for you,
Hmm.
it seemed to make sense that extroverted sensation was the positive and extroverted ethics was the negative in your
Yeah.
answers. Plus, ILI and LI have different emphases because they're one's leading functions, the other's demonstrative function. You see that
Hmm.
one seems to take the lead, and the other one kind of um, is just as important, but very much in the background, and the emphasis isn't placed on it. So, for instance,
Hmm.
rather than necessarily talking about consistency and structure for its own sake, you seem to focus
Hmm.
far more on the idea of things being profound or meaningful, disliking mundane
Hmm.
information, which kept it basically stuff which lacked that sort of long-term profoundness. And also, you
Hmm.
seem to be kind of the logical detail, the logical like specific technicality, seem to only really be to aid the building up of your picture.
Hmm.
Also, the way
Yeah.
even the way when you actually started, when we were talking about typology, and when it was like this, you almost told a long story. How you got at
Hmm.
one point, how you first started, and how that event led to this event, which led to that event, led to that event. And so you can see
Hmm.
like the narrative being the main focus rather than necessarily the structure. Although
Yeah.
the structure, so the narrative was, or the narrative of the picture or the outcome was more explicit, whereas the logical analysis and the technicality was more
Hmm.
implicit.
Okay. Yeah. From what I noticed, like introverted thinking is sort of like a subjective logic where external facts don't really it's not
Mm,
really pertain to external facts whereas like I want things to make logical sense but core like have some sort of external factors to
yes.
strengthen what I believe because like if everybody can see it then you can't debate it like you can't refute it.
Mm. You'll find that LIIs, because introverted logic is their leading function, and extroverted logic is
Hmm.
often their ignoring function. They tend to
Hmm.
focus a lot more on the structure itself, on the theoretical
Yeah.
structure, rather than necessarily the empiricism or the facts. Good
Yeah.
example actually is Galenko, who likes to build a very very big sociologist, and he likes to build his theoretical structures and his theories, and what kind of
Hmm.
because of what makes sense to him, and the idea of
Hmm.
like logical symmetry is a main
Hmm.
part of forming his ideas,
Hmm.
and kind of carrying out the actual empirical research is far less focused on.
Yeah, I'm more
So
concerned with the empirical research and it correlating naturally to reality rather than just sort of my subjective understanding without any external evidence to prove the validity of what I believe.
mm. And it's essentially like two different approaches to science, really. You've got the theoretical cosmologist approach, is more mathematical, more structural. It's more introverted logic. And you've got the empirical approach to science, which is more like hard science, and which is more
Hmm.
essentially make coming up with lots and lots of data from experiments and then analyzing the trends in those data.
Yeah.
And the latter sound would be more of the gamma researcher approach, whereas the former is more alpha researcher approach. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's everything I have to say. Do you have any more questions?
What would you say as far as subtype?
Ah, hmm. I'm more leaning towards the intuitive subtype,
Hmm.
but I'm not 100% sure. Some people I can tell quite easily, others I'm not sure. In terms of DC and H, I don't know. I mean, I'm willing to put forward ILI intuitive subtype for you. I think that
Hmm.
makes more sense than logical subtype because you seem to focus more. Not only were you was the trends like the leading function, but also you tended to talk more about the trends than about
Hmm.
the methodologies and practices. Whereas an ILI logical subtype, so kind of they tend to talk about the extroverted logic aspects more in the conversation. So from that,
Okay.
I'd say that ILI intuitive subtype makes more sense. I mean, I'm not sure of DC and H. I mean, usually with the subtyping, it's something where if I see a clear variation on the type, then I can put it down, but I don't always see it very clearly. Plus, I'm not
Okay.
even sure if I'm entirely accurate with it because I'd actually have to look for DC and H, for instance. There are always dichotomies, which I'm still not
Hmm.
sure about testing yet, which I would need to test before actually being absolutely sure that they are that DCNH subtype. So at the moment, it's far more intuitive with how I just come about putting propositions to what the subtype might be.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you very much, Cliff. So it's bye from me.
See ya.
See ya.